Hello everyone, hope that you all are doing well. Before starting up the video, I would request you that I get query suggestions for covering up some topics, and I try my level best, putting my best efforts to bring those topics that you want me to cover. But you people are not supporting my videos, not sharing among your contacts so the channel reach could grow. Help me out in this. If you learn from my videos, I would request you to please like, comment and share the video among your contacts. And if new to the channel, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. So in today's video, we'll understand role-based authentication. This topic is already been integrated in bus reservation system project series, but let us cover this topic in depth today. So let's start with the discussion of code, and then I'll explain you the complete flow of the code when we'll run the project, right? So let me take you to the project directory first. So this is my ID and this is the project directory. So we have various packages here. So we'll start with the main class first. So this is my main class, that you know that in the Spring Boot application, this is how the main class is being made, right? But before that also I should take you to the pom.xml file, right? So pom.xml file contains some basic dependencies that we need. One is for the database interaction. We need the JPA dependency. For Spring security, we need the Spring Boot starter security. For UI, that we are using the HTML, and in the HTML I am using theme leaf, so I need the theme leaf dependency. Then basic Spring Boot starter web dependency. Then I am using MySQL database in this project, so I require the MySQL connector dependency, and these are the dependencies that I require, right? So this was the pom.xml and this is my main class, right? So let's now jump to direct. So now let us discuss the user model, right? User entity. So in the user entity, we have ID, we have name, we have email, we have password. So these are the things that we are accepting from the user, right? So name, email, password would be input would be provided from the user, right? When he or she has been registering a user. And then there is a many to many mapping between user and role, right? So let me take you to a graph that explains this. So let us discuss this, and that okay, there is a user table, there is a role table, right? And when we say many to many, then there is a common table that has been established, right? So you have a user entity and a role entity, wherein user entity have some data and role entity have some data. So role entity is like there would be an ID and there would be a type of role, right? There could be a role of user, there could be a role of admin, right? And when I save a user, right? When I say that okay, user is A and the role of the user is admin, then what will happen is it will check in the role table that if the role table contains any entry of an admin role, right? If it contains the entry of an admin role, then it will take that admin role ID in from the role table and ID from the user table, and will put those two IDs in the user role table, right? So this is how the mapping is being established, that okay, this particular user ID is of this particular role ID. Now if you want to check that how which user is of which ID, so you can check this user ID in the user table. You will get the name, email ID of user and role ID in the role table. Then you will get that okay, this particular role with that this particular user with the name A is of which role, right? If it is of admin or it is of user, right? So this is the mapping that we established. So there is a particular way that how you tell code that okay, Java code that okay, this is the mapping that we are establishing, and when the common table is being made, say here is that when we define @join table, we say that the name of the table would be user underscore role, right? When the mapping would be established, then a common table would be made of user underscore role, right? And then we are saying that okay, join column @join column, it should contain the name as customer ID, and that customer ID will be containing a value of ID. This ID comes from here, right? The ID of the customer, user, right? And in the table of user underscore role, the name of that column would be customer ID, right? And then we are defining inverse join column, right? Inverse join column is that the other entity that we are making the mapping with. Now in this case, user and role are making the mapping, so we have defined for the user that okay, user ID will be named as customer ID in the user underscore role. Now in the inverse join column, we'll say that for the role column, role ID column, the name of the column would be role ID and the reference would be of ID, right? So it will identify that okay, from the role entity I have to pick the ID and I have to map in this column, role underscore ID. So this is the entity structure, and we have some getter setters in the entity. Now let's go into the role entity as well. So role entity contains an ID and a string role, right? Nothing difference, right? So it is a very small entity that we have maintained. An ID and a name has been required, right? So this is my model structure that we are using for this application. So now let's go to the DTO part. So what is a DTO? As I explained in many videos, it is a kind of a data transfer object. It is a data transfer object. Look, when we are, this is actually a very best practice. We usually use DTO design patterns in our application. So these are the DTO design patterns that we are not using our entity directly. We are not exposing our entity directly to fetch data from user, to fetch data from our APIs. We are using a middle object, that is a DTO, that is fetching the data, and then we are mapping that DTO to our entity, right? We can if our DTO is taking out some data from the UI, I would say from the user, and then we want to do some data massaging, we want to change some values on the basis of few parameters, and then we want to save into our database. So we can do that by getting the data from DTO and then doing some logic, changing some values, and then we can map that DTO values to our entity, and then our entity can get saved into our database. So this is why we are using the DTO. And now let's go to the controller package. So here I am using 4 controllers. Just to make it very simple application, I am using 4 controllers. This could be done in a single controller as well, right? So let's first jump to the registration controller. I am discussing the code first, and then I'll also explain the complete flow of the project, complete flow of the code when we'll run the project. So you can see that we have a mapping of /registration in our register controller. So we are simply creating an object of default service, user service that we have in our project, right? And then we are using the get mapping to show the register page to the user, wherein a form would be displayed where you will be putting the details, right? And that form would contain values that the user entity had, right? ID, email ID, email ID, name, role, and all those of things, right? A password. And when the user inputs all the details on the register form, then it clicks on the submit button. Then the call comes into the post mapping, and in the post mapping, what we do is we directly take the registration DTO and we'll go to the save method of the user service. So the user service is let me take you to the user service first. So the user service is here. So we have made a default user service as an interface, and implementation is here, right? So we have the save method here, right? So directly that call comes in here in the save method, and here what we are doing is we are checking that okay, if our user register DTO contains a role as user, then we have to fetch the role as user from the role role repository, right? We'll fetch that role from the role repository, which contains the value as user, or if the in the user register DTO we have the value of admin, then we have to fetch the role of an admin, right? And then we are simply saving the data, right? We are using the user object, and we are simply setting the data from the register DTO to the user entity, and then we are using the repository method to save, right? So user repository method is here what we are using is user repository. So let me take you to the repository as well. So this is my user repository. So user repository contains it has been extended to JPA repository. So JPA repository contains few methods that we can use. We don't have to implement those methods. We can directly call those methods. It will work accordingly, right? If we are saying dot save, then it has to go and save the entity. So we have taken the entity as user here, right? That's why it is a particular repository for just a user entity, right? We will not perform any other entities operations from this interface, right? So let me now take you to the, so this was my complete flow of registration controller. Now let's take to the login controller. So now in the login controller, what we have is we have a mapping of controller, then we have slash login, and then we have auto wired our default service. So application. So this is called as, this is how you can inject another object in your class, right? So this is one method, and the other method was in the registration controller, what we did here. So we made a we called a constructor of default service to make a object and initialize this object, right? And if we use auto wire, then it directly gets initialized and we have the object when the server starts, right? So this is my way of the other way of making a user service object. So what we can do here is we are using a get mapping for showing the login page to the user. Then we are using the post mapping. When we put when slash login has been called, then a login page would be displayed to the user, right? Get mapping would be called. When you will put your email ID and password in the form, and when you click on submit, then it will go into the post mapping, right? We have the user login DTO here. So what it looks like, let me take you to the user login DTO as well. So user login DTO just contains the username and password. Username is the email ID, right? So the username and password is being contained in the user login DTO. So we'll be accepting the user login DTO from here, and then we'll be going again in the user service, and we'll be calling the load user by username method. So let me take you to the default user service implementation directly. And here what we are doing is we are calling this method by using load user by username, right? So here what we are doing is that when you see that, okay, I am calling the repository method calling by email, and then I'm getting the user object, right? When we put my email ID and password, already my user is being registered. That's why I'm calling my user repo method to load the user by the email ID, right? If the email ID is provided by the user while logging, then I'll check in my database, okay, that for that email ID, is there any user in my database? If that, then please fetch that user and send me the user. And if the user is being sent, then I check that, okay, if user is not null, if it is null, that the user is not present, then I'll say that either your username or password is incorrect, or maybe your user is not registered. If it is not null and we get the user, then we'll send in here in this method. In this method, everything is taken care of. Your passwords are matched from the database, your email ID is being matched from the database, and it is also checked that there is no duplicate user present in your database, right? Right. So this is a simple code wise we have done it, right? So now you can understand that when we register and when we log in, how the flow of the code works. Still, I'll run the application and then I'll tell you that how step by step the code is working, right? So now we are left with the two controllers, that is the dashboard controller and the admin controller. So we have the slash dashboard mapping for the dashboard controller, and we are not doing anything else here. We are just using the get mapping, and we are displaying the dashboard HTML to the user. So this is my dashboard controller, and same would be my admin controller as well, right? So there is no difference in the admin controller as well. So everything is same here as well. So we are here displaying the admin screen to the user, right? So if the role of that user is admin, then it will be able to see the admin screen. And if the role of the user is user, then it will the user would be shown the dashboard, right? Dashboard screen, right? So this is the flow of controllers that we have covered, right? Now let's I've also covered the service part in that only, right? We have covered the repositories as well. Let me take you to the role repository as well. So we have that find by role method, right? Where we are using this find by role method, you can go into the default service and you can see the save method here, right? We are using this, right? Here we are using the method. So my repositories are covered, my controllers are covered, model is covered, DTO is covered. Now we are left with the config package. This is our security package, right? This is defining the security of our application. So here what we are doing is you can also remove this. I have already made a updated part for Spring Security. I should have also removed it, but yes, I am right now using in this application. But you will get the updated code only. I'll remove this extended web security configure and I'll update these methods, and you will get the updated code only. But yes, the updated code has already been done in the updated video of Spring Security. I'll put that link into the description. You can go and check that code as well. So here what we are doing is we are simply using BC crypt password encoder to encrypt the password and save that password into our database. We don't want to save the plain text into our database, so that's why we are using an encoder. Then we have the DAO authentication provider, where we are putting our user service. We are initializing our user service, and we are also initializing our password encoder here. And then we have the on authentication provider. Then we have the config method, which is defining all our mappings that are there. So we are saying that okay, for slash registration you have to permit all requests that has been coming with the URL as slash registration, and we need to authenticate through form login whenever there is a slash login call, right? If there is any slash login call, then we have to authenticate that. And then we are using a success handler here, and we are calling this success handler, right? So I say that okay, when my slash login call is success, means when I have input my email ID and password on my login screen, and I click on submit and load user by username in this default, if this is correct, then I have to redirect it to a success handler, wherein in the success handler what we'll be doing is we'll be checking that what is the role of the user that you are the user that is trying to log in, right? And accordingly we'll be redirecting that user to that particular screen, right? If it's an admin, then we'll be redirecting it to the admin dashboard. If it's a user, then we'll be redirecting it to the user dashboard. So let me take you to the Spring Security again. So here what we are saying that okay, if the login is success, then we have to call the success handler, right? And we have to permit it, and simply we are saying that okay, if there is a logout call, then I have to go on the logout call, right? So these are basic mappings that I've already discussed in my Spring Security video. So you can check that video as well. This is basically the authentication basis on role, right? So we'll try and do that, right? So look, you can also define the authentication based on role in here as well, but I'll try and make it in the success handler, because on that basis I have to make some logic, and then only I have to proceed with certain screen that I have to show it to the user, right? So when the login has been called, then the user would be the application would say to call the success handler. So the success handler, we have defined our custom success handler, which will be implementing authentication success handler, right? And here we have a method called as on authentication success handler. What it is doing is we have made a redirect URL equals to null, and then what we are saying is that okay, fetch the authorities, fetch the roles, right? You can say authorities or roles. So fetch the authorities from the user that is trying to log in, and check that if the granted authority value is equal to user. If the value is equal to user, then the user would be redirected to the slash dashboard. Now slash dashboard would be calling the dashboard controller, and dashboard controller would be displaying the dashboard HTML, right? So else if the granted authority value is admin, then the redirect URL value would be slash admin screen, and slash admin screen would be calling the admin controller and displaying the admin screen, right? So this is how the code flow works, right? I'll also explain when I'll run the application, right? So this is my custom success handler, and if I say that okay, if there is no presence of role in the table, and if there is no mapping of the role done by the user, then my redirect URL value is null, right? The user won't be redirected to anywhere, and the illegal state exception would be thrown that okay, the user needs a role to log in, right? We need the application needs to know that the user is a user role or a admin role person which is trying to log in. And then we have simply called the send redirect method, and where we have put the request response and the redirect URL which we are which we are redirecting the user to, right, on the basis of the conditions. So this is the complete code that we have covered here, right? Now few HTMLs are left, so let me show you the HTML part as well. So we have our register HTML, simply a form that would be displayed, right? And it will contain the name, email ID, password, role of the user. The user needs to select the role from here, and then it needs to submit the form, right? So this is my registration. So login HTML contains our email ID and password, right? So you have to put your email ID and password, and then you have to click on submit. So right now I'm not making any logic on the dashboard part. We are just simply displaying the HTML of the dashboard. So this is the user dashboard, and this is my admin dashboard, right? Right. So our code part has been covered. Now as I'm using the MySQL database, so we need to put properties in the application. These are my properties that I have in my application.properties, and this is my schema name, right? Role-based authentication. So if I go into my database, I have the role-based authentication schema already planned here, right? So there is no tables right now. When I'll run the code, the new tables would be created here. So let me go to the, so queries are visible to you because we have done show SQL true in our property file, right? So our application is started, right? Our application is there, and let us check the tables as well. So our tables are also made. So as I said that there is a mapping between user and role, then there is a common table of users underscore role, right? So we need an entry in the role table, right? We are not updating the role table whenever we are saving a user right now. So we need two entries in our role table, one with the role as admin and one with the role as user. And let me put the ID2 as user. So now I have two entries in my role table. Let me show you that. So I have two entries, one with admin and one with the user. Now let's go on the browser. So now let's run our application here by /registration, right? So we have role-based authentication, and we have this registration page here. So let me enter my name, Raman, and email ID, and my password would be 12345, and the role as admin first, right? So we'll try and figure out that okay, how the admin has been working here. So we have this user details, and let me click on submit. So we have submitted, and we have been redirected to the, so now let's go into the database and let's see that is there the mapping made in the user role or not. So we have the user table, we have the data as ID1, email ID this, name this, and password this. So the user ID is 1. Now the role which we mapped was for admin, right? So our admin role ID is 1. So the mapping in the user role should be 1 1, right? So 1 is the user customer ID, 1 is the role ID, right? So this is how the mapping is being established here, right? So now let me tell you the flow also, that when I submitted my let me go to the controller. So when I clicked on /registration, then my register page was shown to me, and when I input my data and then I clicked on submit, then this call was made, and using the user service method of save, that is in the default user service application. So let me take you to there as well, default user service implementation, right? So here we have the save method. So we got the user registration DTO, and we found out that okay, role was of admin. We fetched the role as admin, and then we saved that user into the repository. So this is the flow of registration that we have covered right now. So now let me go and input my email ID, and let me input my password 12345, right? So when I click on login, so what will happen is, First of all, in the login controller, you can see /login and the login page has been displayed to us. So when I submit, then the post mapping call is being made, right? And it will call the load user by username in the default user service IMPL. So it will load the user from the user using the email ID, and will be checking the password and everything. And then it will take you to the success handler, as our call says that okay, if the login is successful, then you have to go to the success handler. So let me take you to the success handler, and in the custom success handler, what it says is that fetch the authorities of the user from the user that is trying to log in from the database. And if the user role or maybe authority is user, then it should be redirected to the dashboard. And if the authorities are admin, then it should redirect it to the admin screen, right? So now in our case, the user is admin, so it should redirect it to the /admin screen, right? And if the /admin screen call is being done, then it will go to the admin controller, right? So here the mapping is /admin screen, and then the admin screen is shown to the user. So now let's log in. Let's click on login. So you can see that mapping /admin screen. So we have the success here, and it says that welcome to admin dashboard. Your user role was selected as admin. So this is the admin flow that we have covered right now, right? So when we click on logout, the application gets logout. So now let's go on the register page again, and let me save again 1 2 3 4 5 and the role as user, right? I have to click on register. Now again, let us see in the database that okay, we have an entry with the role as user or not. So let us select the details. So you can see that we have ID2 ashish@gmail.com and the name as Ashish, and this is the password. So this is the ID. So user, now let's go to the role table as well. So this Ashish user was of type role as user. So user ID is also 2. So now the mapping would be 2 right? In the user underscore role map. So you see, so we have a mapping 2 here, right? So this is how the mapping works. Right, now let's try and log in. So when I try and log in, ashish@gmail.com and the password as 1 2 3 4 5, and I click on login. So now it has redirected me to the login page, right? It has redirected me to the /dashboard page. So how you are getting this /dashboard page? So it goes to the custom success handler, and it says that okay, the role of this particular user that is trying to log in is user. So it redirects that user to /dashboard. Now /dashboard is the mapping of dashboard controller, right? So it takes it to the dashboard controller, and in the dashboard controller we are shown the dashboard HTML with the name as user, right? So this is my mapping that is being shown here. So it says that welcome to the user dashboard. Your user role is selected as user, and then we have our logout method, right? So now we have covered role-based authentication, right? So covering up, we have also covered up many-to-many relationship between role and user, right? And role-based authentication part is also being covered. Hope that you people learn these concepts from my videos, and hope you people like, share and comment on my videos. And if new to the channel, please press the subscribe button and press the bell icon as well. We'll see you in the next video. Till then, happy learning.